Scootly Doo, it's Hotline League episode 170. I can't ever I alternate now because for the beginning when we used to start Hotline League, for a while it was normal. Then it was I would just try to outdo myself on the weird things. Now I'm like just I go back and forth. And
Caught me off guard with that one.
yeah. Anyways, Hotline League episode 170, brought to you by Alienware and Gamefill. Thank you to both of them for sponsoring the show. We have 3 different guests that are going to make appearances on the show tonight.
I'm overwhelmed already.
Yes. First, my constant, and I'll explain how the show's going to work in a second. But first, my constant co-host, Mark Zimmerman. How's it going, Mark?
Good. I, like most viewers, am also curious how this show's going to go because I don't know what's going on.
Right before the start of the stream, I asked how the audio is, and then everybody's like, it's fine. And then afterwards, I whatever. Sorry for everybody, headphone users, if this was bad. No, but I mean, what have you been doing for the past week, Mark?
So I started watching a show called The Circle on Netflix. It's not bad. It's one of those kind of, people vote people out social game kind of things. It was a pretty good one. It's a little cheesy. You have to deal with some like awkwardness, but overall the concept's pretty good. I like it.
So last, I think I'm not allowed to talk too much about what I did last Tuesday, other than to say that it was a holiday, and I spent it in the evening watching a show called the Lost Republic of Pirates on Netflix. I'm only a couple episodes in, but it is a really weird thing that is simultaneously both a documentary and a
drama.
And like, yeah, they took like the dramatization thing that people used to do for documentaries, and then they just like cranked it into being like, what if we did that like low budget Game of Thrones? And that was a very good way for me to spend that evening.
Is it called Lost Pirate Kingdom?
Yeah, Lost Pirate Kingdom, I think is what it is. Yeah, you're right.
I was looking it up. I was like, what are you talking about? I can't find it.
Like Chernobyl on HBO? No, nothing like Chernobyl on HBO. It's like, what if we did a documentary and then tried to pretend, and then like they put like sex scenes in it, which is I don't think something you normally see in a documentary. And they're tame. It's like they're like PG-13 sex scenes. But
are they also like sexplanations? Like
no, it's not like they have experts that are like, and then they did this position and this. No, it's but it's very wild. And it's not good by any means, but it was a very interesting way. Other than that, I've been playing It Takes Two with
Josh was trying to get me on that too as well.
It's good. You should not play with Josh. You should play it with Ashley.
Right. That's what I mean. Josh was playing it with someone, and he was suggesting I play with Ashley as well.
Yeah. So I was streaming that yesterday. People can go check that out. But that's been fun. And then and then making a shit ton. We were just talking about this beforehand. I've been making a shit ton of TikToks on my people. Go follow me on TikTok, please. I'm trying to get 1,000
I am
followers.
depressed that you have put more effort into your TikTok than the Book Talk channel or the BookTube channel.
I mean, I've put more effort into it in the past week than the book channel. And you know what it is? It's because I addressed this last week, but lately I've just been feeling very like.
Well, you said in the book channel on Discord that the book chat that you found a new book. You didn't even say what it was though.
I know it's a secret. But lately I've just been feeling like it's been really difficult for me to want to sit down and make videos for the YouTube channel, and I don't know why. I'm not like depressed or anything like that, but the TikTok thing is nice because I think sometimes when you end in a creative rut, or you just like can't get yourself to where you need to go, like creating content that's completely different is helpful. And so the TikTok stuff has been fun because it's been a way for me to sort of reignite my creativity in a very different format. So yeah, and they've been getting great reception on Twitter as well. So I'm hoping I can keep doing them. But yeah.
Soulless husk only driven by numbers. If the book channel was doing better, you'd be doing that. But
no, but like
only follow
there's so few creators in the world, I think, who do not feel encouraged to create more when they see something that they've created as popular or is like getting a good reception or whatever, you know. So you're zoning out, Mark? What are you doing?
Zoning out. Is that okay?
Well, let me explain how tonight's going to work. So,
Well, let me tell you something else I watched. I watched Shadow and Bone this weekend too. I forgot to mention that.
was
It was
that any
good.
good?
It was good. I mean, like
I've heard the books are not worth reading as an adult, but
I don't know anything about the books. Haven't tried to read them. I tried to read the Six of Crows duology. Couldn't really get into it, which is also kind of tapered in there. But the show itself was pretty good. I feel like they tamed down some of the YA tropey elements, and it was pretty good.
nice. Okay, well, this is cool.
There
But
you go.
we're going to talk about what's happening on the show. Because virtually nothing happened in the LCS sphere this past week. I know we have Proving Grounds, but if we did a whole show about Proving Grounds, I think people would not be very interested. So we've got that. LCS did announce some stuff this morning that we can talk about a little bit. But basically, they did like a spring in review thing where they talked about some of their achievements and viewership stuff. I would say there's some good stuff. I think they ignored maybe some of the not so great stuff in this, but it's not like the spring was awful or anything like that. But I don't know. For instance, I guess the one call out I'll make, for instance, is that they say like, hey, Friday's average minute audience, which I believe is their metric for like the average amount of people that are watching at any minute, increased 70% since the launch of Friday broadcast last summer. Okay, that's great. What was average minute audience like from like summer last year or like overall last year? So I think they played a little bit with the numbers, but there are some good things. They also mention in here that during the LCS, so one, I woke up to this email that was like, hey, previous ticket holder who's attended the LCS, we're not going to have anybody in the studio this summer, but please take the survey on what you might want to do. So I guess that's them saying they're not going to have anybody in for the summer. But they also said here, you'll continue to see the LCS Analyst Studio in use by our hosts, which is what they did during playoffs. They had Dash there. I assume now maybe they'll have the Tigers in. And it says, and gradually other analyst shoutcasters teams and eventually fans as local regulations allow. So supposedly they're not going to have anybody in for summer split fans-wise, but maybe that means they might try to have some in by playoffs or whatever. But it also means that teams, analysts, and shoutcasters are not going to be in studio, at least in the very beginning. So interesting stuff there. We can talk about that. And then so we're going to have Tim, Seven Houston. I believe that's how you say his name. He makes a show for me. I should know.
You work with him constantly. You don't know how to say his last name?
How often do you say the last names of people that you work with?
I say Travis Gafford all the time. Travis Gafford from Travis Gafford Industries. I say
when do you say Travis Gafford?
Like all the time.
All right. Anyway,
everyone, we're shit talking you all the time in the Discord channels for Riot. We're just like, God, Travis Gafford's such a little.
Why don't they just say Travis? I feel like people would know.
Because there's other Travises in the world.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that people are shit talking me, Mark. So I appreciate the candidness. And so we're going to have Tim and Kelsey on to talk about Proving Grounds. We'll talk a little bit about MSI. The next week will be like the really big MSI episode. And then one person I've been wanting to have on for a while, but didn't make sense to have on during the middle of the split or when there's like a ton of like big news hitting, is somebody named Jordan Tsai. I really hope that's how I say his name. Again, somebody I don't know who's, but he runs Respawn Therapy. And he works with Cloud9, Evil Geniuses, and 100 Thieves. Really cool guy who will talk a ton about the healthiness. Uh-oh.
What?
Yes. Sorry, Kobe just closed my door. We were being too loud. Anyway, so he's going to be on for 30 minutes. In about 15 minutes from now, we'll have him on. So, but it's going to be cool to talk to him about all this sort of stuff he works on.
One time when Kobe's being a little butt munch about this, you should mute me to stream, and I will scream through your speakers just to piss him off. But I don't want to hurt our viewers' ears. Sound
okay.
good?
Yeah.
You let me know when you're ready for that.
Okay. So it's going to be a packed episode. We've got multiple guests on. We've got all this cool stuff happening, and I'm happy we were able to do this in a week whenever normally there's maybe not as much stuff to talk about. So, yeah.
Don't you jump up here, mister. There's no room for you up here. There's no room at the end for you. Oh, my God. Come here. Come here,
Okay.
you're gonna knock something over. You're gonna knock a candle over. You're gonna set yourself on fire.
So we do have 15 minutes before we get to that. Is there anything we want to talk about, or anything else that I'm forgetting about, Mark, that happened this past week, besides Proving Grounds and the riot announcement stuff? And Twitch chat, feel free to help us out if there's anything we're forgetting.
Well, I know you didn't want to. I mean, I don't want to get too much into MSI either, but there is some like MSI drama, quote unquote, going around, like with some of the coaches not being able to make it with their visas.
Yes. So Reaper, I guess, won't be able to Tabe from RNG. So I think that's interesting.
I
did we learn why Reaper can't?
I mean, why would Reaper go? What? What was the Reaper one? Reaper's not a coach.
You heard me say Reaper, but what I said was Rainover. Mark.
Okay.
Cloud9 has a coach that's name begins with R, and is approximately 8 characters or so, and that's
racist.
Yeah. No, everybody's gonna fucking say that now. Whenever it doesn't matter who it is if they were the coach of Cloud9 and their coach name begins with R.
Travis can't say Tim Sevyhusin either, so just let him go. Okay. Travis is a mess all around. As Empire put in chat too, I forgot about this. The SolaFide drama.
Yeah. Well, I figured Kelsey's been popping up. I think Kelsey's been subtweeting about that more today than anything she's ever subtweeted about in her career. So I want to give her the chance to go ham on that. But if for those that don't know, SolaFide, which was a amateur team, it became clear, I think, maybe 8 weeks ago, that they were not paying their players. And the team literally decided not to play in a specific tournament because of that, and sort of dropped themselves from the org. And Riot just came out with their competitive ruling today, banning the ownership from owning anything because they weren't getting paid their salaries. I think also not tournament winnings. So it was like
that's. I mean, I didn't read too far into it, but that seems like what it was as well.
Yes. Yeah, I was reading around about it, and the guy who runs it released some like
twit longer
trying to explain why it wasn't his fault, when in reality it's like this was
it's only your fault. There's no one else.
You know what it was? It's amateur, and guess what? It was amateur hour. Is the way I would describe it. So,
I think the thing that most interests me about this whole thing is Captain Flowers' response to him.
Yeah.
Because Captain Flowers works for Riot. He doesn't have Riot Captain Flowers in it, but I wonder if anyone at Riot's like, you got to tone that down a little bit.
I don't think so, because why would it? One, Captain Flowers is a freelancer. He's not. He has a lot of freedom.
I mean, I'm all about it, dude. I'd love to Captain Flowers throws shade at people when he feels like
also
they fucked up.
why
I love it.
I think Riot probably feels like they could do more to screw over the SolaFide guy too, or wishes they could, besides banning him. And so I'm sure Captain Flowers coming at him it's not bad.
They got snaps.
Yeah, Rare Curie, thank you for the Prime. Thank you for the 24 months. This guy tried to Badawi. This SolaFide guy, I think, tried to Badawi his situation, being like, no, everyone. It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances. I'm going to be around. And instead, it didn't work this time.
I just feel like no one's ever been as ridiculous as the Badawi things.
Okay, people are asking what Captain Flowers said. And so I will, I'll pull up his tweet. Basically, the SolaFide guy tweeted something where he tweeted the twit longer, and Flowers just replied and said, "Imagine waking up every morning, looking in the mirror and seeing this big of a fucking snake looking back at you. Shameful." I mean, and by the way, the Riot ruling said that like it got to a point where the players on the team were like, "Can you please just pay 2 of the players some money?" Because I guess 2 of the players were in like a tough financial situation. And they didn't even pay it that. So yeah, this guy apparently deserves everything. Everything that he.
How dare you besmirch Gon's name with him as your anime Abby? You scumbag.
Yeah.
You think Gon wouldn't pay his players? You
so
don't even know who Gon is, but
So other than that, maybe we can get going a little early. Let me see.
You're struggling to fill this time
Why don't you explain how the show works, Mark?
for 11 minutes?
While I'm messaging somebody, because maybe we can get them on a little early.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, this is a live call-in show. Wow, there's actually a fair amount of people in the pleb calls and sub calls. I thought today was going to be a slow week. I thought I was going to pull like 3 people and call it a night. But apparently people actually want to talk. If you are one of those people who want to talk, go ahead and join the Discord, which I'm spamming in Twitch chat right now. Once you get there, it is you're going to want to join the pleb calls or pleb calls 2 voice channels. You mute yourself once you get in there. Then in the pleb topics text channel up above, you're going to go and write in whatever it is that you want to talk about this week. We'll probably be able to handle some broader takes, though we do have the guests with specific ones coming on later that are kind of their areas of expertise. Assuming we like your topic, we'll pull you from the pleb calls channel, and put you in the waiting room where you'll hang out until it's your turn to go on.
And by the way, our first guest will be, and he's ready to go in a second, so we'll start a little bit early with him, and maybe we'll wrap up early as well. Is going to be our physical therapist expert for the LCS. So if people have questions about sort of how he works with the players, stuff like that, I expect some people, as he's talking, as we're kind of interviewing him a little bit, people might have a couple questions, and maybe they'll put them in now, so we don't need to be scrambling to fill up the waiting room yet. But we will do that. And I get some people are going to probably be like, hey, this feels a little different than what they talk about normally on Hotline League. I think this stuff is really fascinating. I think you might be surprised at how interesting it is too. We obviously spend a lot of time talking about players trying to stay like in a good mental space and like in a good place. We don't oftentimes talk about sort of the physical toll that this game tends to take.
My mom's a physical therapist.
What's that, really?
Yep.
I did not know that. Well, we could maybe next time we'll have her on. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pull him into the channel, and then we'll get him set up on Skype as well. So here we go. Hello, everyone can hear you. Should I what do you want to be referred to on here, Jordan?
I mean, you can call me Jordan, but Tsai or Jordan, either way. I don't really mind.
So Jordan, I will call you on Skype now, and I'll just add you to this call with Mark, and then if you can pick up, we'll be good, and then we'll start sort of talking to you about different stuff.
Cool.
1 second. Oh, and just do me one favor, which is when I do call you and you answer, just mute Skype so that we don't get audio from you from 2 different places.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay, call should be going through now. And I'm going to have you join up. Yeah, if you can turn on your camera.
All right. So I'm muted on Skype. Is this good?
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome.
And we will have you on screen. There we go. Nice Cloud9 shirt.
How's it going? Yeah. Thank you.
Very good.
Got to support the guys.
Okay,
NA.
Jordan, while I get your name up on screen and everything, do you want to explain, I gave the show a little bit of a preview on what you do, but you can probably introduce yourself better.
Sure. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm an orthopedic clinical specialist. I've been working in professional esports for the last 3 years. I work primarily with LCS players, so Cloud9, 100 Thieves, Evil Geniuses, but I've also had experience working with players of other games, so Valorant, Fortnite, World of Warcraft, CSGO, kind of running the gamut. It's kind of a passion of mine. I've been a gamer my whole life. I knew when I graduated that I wanted to somehow get into esports, and very fortunate to be in the position I'm in.
That's awesome.
I have a question off the top from that.
Yeah.
Which group of gamers has ruined their wrists the worst?
Oh, man. So different games, different issues. So I would say that the majority of wrist issues I see are League of Legends players, and it probably has to do with the fact that they're more wrist movement of the mouse players. When you see a lot of FPS competitive like Fortnite, CSGO, Valorant players, you see a lot more shoulder and neck issues because they tend to play on a different sensitivity. They're doing bigger movements of the entire arm. It's just different levels of strain based on what you actually play.
So what has it been like working with the league pros in particular? Because I know you said you've been doing this for a couple of years now, so I assume you get in. I don't know if you get in and you're like, oh my god, what are you guys doing, or what it was like when you first got in.
It's definitely been a shift. When I first started working with Cloud9, it was on a very case by case basis, and I think this is kind of the norm in esports, where player has an issue, they call up their physical therapist, they call someone local to come in and check out the player, who, I mean, in most cases, may not even understand what professional gaming is, and so there's a learning period of trying to figure out, how do I best help this person? Because you don't know anything about what they do. You don't know anything about the game. And you're also trying to figure out, like, is this an injury, et cetera. So one of the things that I wanted to do differently was, I try to approach players as a player. I play a lot of League myself. I'm terrible, but I understand some of the mechanical stress that goes on when you play. And I think that firsthand experience helps a lot with understanding what are the potential issues that might come up. So C9 originally, like I said, they brought me in to see a couple players who might have had injuries. And then over the course of that season, it was 2018 when they went to Worlds and got through semis. I talked to Jack, and basically we established that, hey, maybe it's a good idea to see players preventatively. Let's set up regular visits. Let's try to take care of stuff before it becomes full-blown injuries. Because a lot of this stuff, I like to differentiate strain from injury. A lot of the stuff that they suffer while they play is a repetitive stress type issue. It's not that you'll play a game of solo queue and all of a sudden your wrist just goes out and you're in 9 out of 10 pain. It's more like this accumulation that builds up as you grind hours of scrims, as you grind solo queue. So a lot of the stuff, if you can just nip it in the bud and kind of change some of their habits early on, you can prevent a lot of these issues from becoming more serious. So that's something that we kind of started up, and it's been really successful over the last 2 years. Is I go in every week, I check in with players, I say, hey, are you having any problems this week? Just try to troubleshooting and making sure their ergonomics are set up correctly, making sure they're doing preventative exercise. If someone starts to feel something starting to come on, we can try to diagnose it and kind of give them a guide to alleviate some of those stresses from building up too much.
And I know you said like repetitive stress injury. Obviously, people are very familiar with like carpal tunnel and all that stuff. What are the things that tend to build up? I mean, you said like the wrist stuff, but what is causing all this? It's literally just them doing the same movement over and over again.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up carpal tunnel. In 3 years, I've never actually seen a case of carpal tunnel in a professional gamer. It's kind of a industry buzzword or like hot topic, but and other PTs who work in the space that I know would agree. Like, there's very, very little carpal tunnel. There's other types of nerve issues, but from what I see, mostly in League of Legends, it's primarily extensor tendon overuse. So the extensor tendon is the muscle that runs on your forearm down to your fingers, and it's what allows you to click your mouse. So on average, League players might click their mouse thousands of times per game, and if they're playing multiple games a day, that's a lot of click rate. I call it the League of Legends muscle. Generally, every player I see, as soon as I push right here, it's really, really sore. So one of the issues is that when you take your joints and your tendons and fingers and move them through a fraction of the amount of available range of motion you have, that causes a lot of irritation, because it'd be like if I had you do a bicep curl at 10% of your range over and over 10,000 times, your biceps just not going to feel very good after. Muscles like to go through full range. And a lot of times, because you're spending 8 to 10 hours playing League, you're not ever moving your hand actually through its full range of motion. So a lot of the times, it's just simply breaking up habits. I try to encourage them to do certain stretches, certain movements in between games, trying to fit it in with basically there's already checkpoints when you play League that you can use as a way to remind yourself to do certain things. So, every time you're in champ select, after you selected your champion, you set your runes, you should be doing a couple easy stretches. You should be doing a couple wrist warm-ups, doing a couple finger exercises. Those 10 to 30 seconds of activity can a lot of times push your ability to play pain-free hours later, versus starting to do it when you already have symptoms. It's already kind of playing catch up and a little bit too late.
And apologies, by the way, to the podcast listeners who I know can't. Where hopefully we'll be able to describe as many things as in verbal ways as well as physical, because obviously some things we'll have to point out. But have there been times in League or maybe even these other games where you come in and you're like, somebody's like, oh, I'm experiencing this situation and it's like holding me back from being able to play as much, and it's like, so it's like a disaster situation. You're like, oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know how bad it gets with some of these esports athletes.
It's interesting. I have been called in like emergency a couple times, like, hey, we have a game tomorrow, and my player just messaged me like, I can't play. Like, what's going on? And so a lot of times, I'd say 90% of the time when you get that message, obviously you freak out. You're like, let's go check it out. Most of the time, it's nothing as serious as they literally cannot play. It's about, okay, well, what did you do, and how can we alleviate your symptoms enough to get you on stage or get you into that match that you need to play. Again, mechanically, playing 1 or 2 games of League of Legends is not crippling, right? It's not going to be so debilitating that you can't play through a little bit, but it's the hours and hours of practice in between that tends to get played. So, like, for example, one player I saw, it was, I think I called in on a Thursday, and they had a playoff game on Sunday, and I told them, you cannot solo queue. I want you to scrim, and I want you to spend your solo queue time doing VOD review. I want you to do other things other than mechanically play. But that way you maximize the actual practice time you have with scrims, and you don't waste time or waste your body's tolerance for this stuff by playing solo queue.
Because I'm sure that was a terrible, like, I'm sure they hated hearing that they couldn't solo queue. I'm sure that was terrible news for them.
Yeah, he was worried that, like, hey, I think my hand is broken, I need to go to the ER. And I was like, no, I think this is like a muscle strain. So we were able to take care of it and, calm him down, gave him some stretches, worked on it a little bit. A lot of what I do is also manual therapy. So basically massaging the muscle, loosening it up, stretching certain joints, showing him how to re-facilitate that on his own. Icing, it's all the treatment modalities that you would use for typical athletes, right? Like if you see a football player who pulls a hamstring on a field, there's a way that you can get him back into the game, hopefully within the next few days. But it's kind of the same thing. A lot of it's symptom management and getting him through a full season.
Are you worried at all about, because there's always a ton of discussion around, like, a lot of these players are practicing or competing 6 days a week. Sometimes it's 7 whenever you really need to get into the grind. Oftentimes they're going, they do a full day of scrims and review, and then they have to do solo queue and all that stuff. Do you think there's a world where, like, these guys are just getting, the season is too long, or they're not having a chance to kind of, like, reset their body physically?
Absolutely, if it's not structured well. From what I see, though, the pro scene actually is healthier than the not pro scene. I think streamers honestly put their bodies through so much worse than what the pros do. You got streamers who are doing 24-hour subathons every other week. Like, it's crazy. Like that's so hard on your body. I started streaming like 4 or 5 hours. You feel drained after, like you're exhausted, and I can only imagine what some of these streamers who are doing it full time, 5-6 days a week, doing 10-hour streams. I mean, that's brutal. You don't see pros doing that. And also most pro teams have the built-in structural benefits of, okay, they have a good, usually, food is better because they have a chef or whoever, they have someone preparing food. They have practice schedules. So you can't scrim all the way through the afternoon because you have 3 or 4 scrim blocks. It's structured. You have VOD reviews in between, you have coaching time. A lot of teams have personal trainers now, so they work out in the mornings. I mean, the overall lifestyle of a pro player, I think, is better set up for success, which it should be, than a lot of amateur players. So I think a lot of people who go from solo queue environment, maybe top of the ranked ladder, into pro, actually end up playing less league.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Because you're not just grinding out all the games.
Right.
I had a question when you mentioned the streamers. Do you have any warnings against people spending too long in hot tubs? Is that a concern with the Twitch meta right now?
Yeah, what's the physical therapy there?
Yeah, there's actually a condition, and this is not physical therapy, but there's a condition where, when people are out in the ocean or in the water too long, where too much water will absorb into your body and your skin will break down and they will start bleeding out of their hands and out of their feet. God. So if we haven't seen that yet,
dear God. Okay. Well, warning to all the hot tub streamers out there, just an FYI.
Yeah. Take breaks. Definitely.
I'm thinking, Mark, I don't know if you've started pulling a couple calls. Maybe we could take one or two for Jordan here. But while we're doing that, and again, I apologize to podcast listeners. Jordan, I'm sure, will do his best to verbally describe this. But there's some requests on what some good exercises would be for people who are playing League of Ladder at the computer a lot.
Sure.
And if you have any general recommendations.
Yeah, so the number one, I always try to stress concepts more than specific exercises. So one concept is, if you're playing a lot of video games or if you're on your computer all the time, you tend to be in a forward hunched position with your shoulders kind of forward of your chest, right?
Yeah, that's
Your
that like
head tends to
lean
be
in
forward.
time to the meme on like take it seriously or whatever. 2 games
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're try-harding, right? So the exercises that you want to focus on are exercises that reverse those positions. So you want to work on exercises like rows where they pull your shoulder blades back. You want to work on planks because you're getting out of a hip flexed position that you're in when you're sitting. It kind of puts your body, into an extended position, strengthens your core, opens your hip flexors up. I always try to focus on exercises that are going to counteract what you do all day. So that's a really basic general way to approach it. But beyond that, cardiovascular fitness has been shown and research to be the most beneficial for gamers, probably because it improves reaction time, it improves brain function, improves memory, pattern recognition, cognitive ability, problem solving, like all of these benefits from doing cardio. And everyone hates cardio, but it's literally also, it's not just for your heart, it's also for your brain.
And for the people in our chat who don't know what cardio is, because maybe they've never been to a gym, or like they got done with PE in high school and that was about it. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah. So cardiovascular fitness is oftentimes just people call it, people often use running as synonymous, and I don't think that's true. You can do any form of exercise that you enjoy for a sustained period of time to get your heart rate up and then maintain it for 15 to 20 minutes. That's going to be really helpful. So if you like to weightlift, fine, spend a day where you go really, really light, but do like a circuit of lifts and don't take any breaks. Your cardiovascular health will improve. Like your heart rate will go up and it'll be maintained. That's why CrossFit actually works really well. It doesn't require you to run all the time. It just gets your work rate up to a certain point and maintains it for a certain amount of time.
And I know you've been working more with different streamers and personalities, and you actually helped me a little bit with some back pain I had about 6 months ago, and it worked out really well.
Cool.
I think one thing you and I had talked about at the time is like, oftentimes I think people hear, like you mentioned earlier, do planks, do these stretches or whatever. People are like, oh, they get up and they don't want to think about the idea of like getting up and doing these exercises in the morning, or if they're not used to like a gym routine, that doesn't sound that exciting for them. So but you gave me some advice, I think, on just how to fit them in easily or what to do that were really light. I don't know if you want to provide any of that for the people who are just like listening to this and they're like, oh, I know I should like go to the gym and do all these stuff. I don't know if you have anything like that.
It'd be hard to give you a full quick workout routine right now, but I would say, if anyone's interested, I have an Instagram. It's at Respawn Therapy, and I do post a lot of exercises on there. I have a lot of easy things that gamers can do to help improve their body function. But generally, it's like you just do easy stuff. Like something I stress with all the pros I work with is I don't want to give you a 2-hour workout that you have to rigidly adhere to every day. I know it's not realistic. What I try to aim for is small habit changes. I want you to learn a few basic exercises that you can incorporate throughout your day that almost don't even feel like exercises. A lot of this stuff people do kind of on their own, like habitually. Like after you play a game of League, a lot of people will just kind of stretch their shoulders back and like stretch their chest. That's great. Do it longer. So yeah, I would say that the easiest ones are probably your wrist stretches, extension and flexion. You're going to either go fingers down and your arm is straight out. You're going to pull on the knuckles to create a stretch on your forearm. And then you're going to flip it. Your fingers are going to go up. You're going to pull on your fingers to create a stretch in the forearm in the front. Moving your back through full range of motion is really important. When you sit all day and you're not moving, you start developing stress at the joint level and at the muscle level. So in between games, if you just turn in your chair and twist to either side, you get some good pops, cracks. That all feels good. You can also go forward and back. That's all really easy movement stuff, but it's going to honestly help so much by preserving preventing the irritation from building up over hours. Like if you think of a typical gaming session of let's say 6 to 8 hours, right? If you're a streamer, if you were to break that into 6 or 8 1-hour sessions with like a 30-second break in between, it's going to feel so much different than streaming for 5 hours and then trying to stretch and then streaming for another 3 hours. Micro breaks are probably the biggest thing you take away.
I remember one of the things that I've been doing ever since you told me about it that I really like is just this kind of thing where, and I'm not going to completely describe it, right? But it's like when you're standing, you kind of like pull, like as if you're like tugging from your navel like forward and like kind of arching your back a little bit, and maybe even having your arms up and kind of like pulling back. It's stuff like that is part of the thing that I know you've talked about that is really cool to me, because that's something I'll do like while I'm just chilling in the kitchen, waiting for something to pop up from the toaster, or talking to Kobe or something like that at some point in time. And so those little things that you talk about integrating throughout the day is cool. Mark, do you want to pull our first caller?
Sure, let me grab him.
So Mark is off grabbing our first caller. By the way, some shout outs to some subs. Thank you to Trevor Monreal, Tahizi, Power of Ramen, Rurikiri for the 2 years, Pilgrim Panda, 1 year, D9 TV for gifting a sub, Kanoke for the 13 months. Lord Audie is here. Lord Audie, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Queens, New York.
New York. Okay, what do you want to talk about on the show?
Calling as a 39-year-old, I just wanted to see how much truth there is to the perception about age and performance when it comes to gaming. I know that there's some, I don't know if it is a misconception or not, that, as you get older, you lose reaction time, you get slower, and things like that. And then I wonder how much validity there is there to that.
That's a really good question. And that's something that I love that you brought this up, because this is a hot topic that I am constantly talking about. There is no evidence that gamers or people in general can't play at high levels past their 30s, because what we know about reaction time, and this is done through clinical testing, it does not significantly slow down until after 35, 36. I mean, even then, it's nominal. The reaction times that they measure, the differences are something like 10 milliseconds, which if you kind of look at that the typical human reaction time, no matter what, is about 60 to 70 milliseconds to react to anything. There's almost no way it could be faster than that. If you're under 60, it's basically an anticipatory response, meaning that you're almost starting to do something before you actually can react to it. And that comes with training too. So if you look at purely reaction time, there's no difference. There's no reason why someone can't play it at 40. We see it in other sports that are much more physically demanding, like, football, like Tom Brady, right? Just won a Super Bowl at 42? That's incredible. And he still has to make the same decisions that he had to make when he was 19 at the same speeds, if not faster, because players are better now than they were 20 years ago. So I think when you take away the reaction time component, the biggest issue that's probably stopping gamers from getting to their 30s, their 40s professionally is most likely lifestyle, because by those time periods, you can't put in the same amount of hours anymore unless you've been dedicating your whole life to this whole thing. And also there is the physical stress. Many gamers that we see retire prior to 30, it's usually physically related, right? We've seen a lot of really high profile players retire very recently due to physical issues. And like I was saying earlier, a lot of these issues that gamers have are actually preventable issues. It's not like someone tackled you and you tore your ACL and you're not going to recover. These are issues that are building up so slowly over time that better habits can actually prevent a lot of it. So I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see some serious gamers past 30, like 35 even. Because we already see that. Hiko, right, from 100 Thieves Valorant, he's killing it right now. He's 31, I think? He's doing amazing. He's still, playing at a top level for anybody. It's not just like, oh, he's a pro. He's actually a top level pro. He's doing on a really good team. And we see it in other games as well. But I like to point to him specifically because Valorant is definitely a game where if you have bad reflexes or if you're not on point, it shows, right? It's very, very noticeable in that game if you're not playing at a high level. So, I don't think there's any physical reason if gamers take care of their bodies why they can't get to that age group.
I mean, sadly, I feel like so many of it is those other reasons where it's just like, no, when you turn 25, 26, maybe you don't feel like giving up 6 or 7 days of your week to entirely League of Legends because you're like, hey, I met someone great, and she or he is somebody I'd like to spend time with outside of the off season or something.
Yep.
Many reasons like that. So, or I want to go to the rave and I can't because I'm going to be competing.
Well,
Mark,
the other thing that's interesting about that, it was like the lifestyle thing is like there's a lot of discussion in general about the lifestyle of pros, especially in the league scene, especially players in China and Korea, because they do a lot of them. You'll listen to the world champion interview, like Doinby, a lot of the Samsung white guys when they won, or blue. white when they won. Even the blue guys talk the same way. Like a lot of the Korean players will say like, oh yeah, I slept 4 hours a night and I would play 18 hours a day during like my championship run. And obviously unhealthy, probably unsustainable. And it's just one of those things where the payoff versus like the cost and like the longevity of people who do that kind of stuff, like it's something where sadly I haven't really heard too many instances of people winning without some insane schedule like that, which blows my mind. It scares me a little.
This is a super interesting topic to me. So on my stream, I interview a lot of coaches. I interview a lot of performance professionals in esports. And the big takeaway and the big talking point I think that we all reach, especially in NA, is there has to be a more efficient way to practice. And it's really hard to say that because obviously everyone's like, oh, NA is a joke region. We never make it. But if you look at, you can't use results-based analysis in order to create the future systems, right? If you say that Korean teams always win or LPL teams always win, we need to do what they're doing. That's a very backwards way to approach a problem when in reality, I think the biggest issue is that Riot doesn't give pro players an actual practice system. And I've been talking about this with so many pros and they all agree, like, why can't we get a chrono break game? Like why can't we set up scenarios and actually run a Baron pit 5v4 like 25 times in 10 minutes? Like, why can't we do these things? Because that's what's holding people back, right? Like you can't play solo. Like this would be like the equivalent of an NFL team doing nothing but scrimming another NFL team in the hope that they're going to get better. Like it's madness. That's not, I mean, everything we know about practicing and everything we know about skill acquisition points towards blocked practice as it's the most useless waste of time actually, because you're getting randomized variables every single time. How can you practice anything?
You can't. I
and
just
to bring
love
it back. Go ahead.
From
Mike.
a medical professional's mouth, because it's something that I've been passionate about a long time too. Where it's like, I don't like the like you have to just grind scenario after scenario because you can't set up what you actually want to practice. And like,
and
Travis,
you hope that you get the champions that you're actually going to play. Like, that's crazy.
Well, and to bring it back to sort of the physical therapy side and the physical aspect of it. I'm sure for you, you're like doing the same thing over and over again, physically not great. If you can sort of mix it up, if you can have more targeted practice, then that's going to give you more time to like, let your body rest and reset and get back to a good place, I assume. Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah. I think that in my opinion, the biggest factor that having, let's say a better practice tool would provide is more the mental burnout. Like, do you really want to play out the first 10 minutes of every game to get to a point in which you can practice team fighting? Like that, it's just tedious, like I can only imagine the ADCs who like, if every time they restart a game, like, okay, well I have to farm my first 10 waves again. Like, it's just very, very tedious. And if you're, let's say that your team, if your coaches have identified our biggest problem is around the third dragon or, like it is around mid game. Once we lose that first turret, it's really difficult for us to play cohesively. But you have to play through that whole first early game every time to get to that point to actually work on what you want to work on. It makes it very difficult for teams to improve that way because if you've identified a weakness and you can't specifically work on that weakness, how are you supposed to get better overall? You're going to have to keep getting better generally and then hope that eventually you get into these scenarios enough that you can actually get better at those things.
Yeah.
I think one thing I saw in Twitch chat, people being like, oh, well, how are you going to beat the Koreans or this, that, and if you're not, if you're waiting for this. Well, I also just take the argument that like this is better for the Koreans and Chinese players as well. It's better for the entire pro ecosystem if we're not literally killing our best players every year. Like hypothetically, if perma grinding the game is the way that you get the best at the game right now, well, those people are going to burn out. They're going to hurt themselves. You
can actually see this happening, right? LPL teams have such crazy turnover in players, but it works for them because they have a player base that's like 1,000 times bigger than everyone. So you can afford to burn out your best players because you have another 1,000 waiting behind them. It's a really ruthless way to approach it, and it's unfortunate for the players, especially if the teams are promoting this kind of mentality. But I do think that until NA or EU beats one of these teams in a final, it's going to be really tough to change it because I understand it, from an owner's perspective, from a coach perspective, especially a lot of coaches are imported. So they're coming from a region that is the standard. They're going to bring that coaching philosophy. They're going to bring that training philosophy. And I'm not saying it's bad. I think that it could be better, but until we actually show quantifiable evidence that a system in which players are playing less games but getting more quality practice and actually wins, it's really going to be difficult to change the environment, because nobody wants to be the first team to try something like that and then end up 10th place in a league.
Yeah, and I think the broader point too for me is like it should help everyone. Like I think a lot of people often, when you talk about like practice tool and some of these things, it creates like an us versus them mentality. Like we're trying to change the status quo because we're losing. It's like, no, we're trying to change the status quo because it sucks right now, it's untenable.
I guarantee if Riot released a perfect practice tool where you could set everything up, you could pick champs, you could level everyone up to whatever state, and then you could just play the game. If they released that, China and Korea would get better. Yeah, because they would take full advantage of it. They would probably try to put the same number of hours in, but they would get even better quality.
Well, I know. I know it's super fascinating. I'm glad we're having this conversation, but I do know we've got a little bit off of the callers point, which often happens. I
nerd out on this stuff. Yeah. This stuff is like what I'm interested in. But yeah.
But Lord Audie, any quick questions or follow-ups? I know we took it on a tangent.
I really appreciate not killing my esports dreams by those comments. So, and also that I also wanted to note another example is that over the weekend we had Quake finals, and one of the one that won was a 32-year-old that has been playing for 15 years. So there's it just goes to that argument that even at a game that is so quick as Quake, age doesn't that much of an impact. Yeah, but outside of that, it's just thank you for answering. Just reiterating that point.
Another point on that topic though too is I do think if we start seeing players get to that age range, you're actually going to see the best players in the world that have never been seen before. Because who's to say? Let's say Faker stays healthy, right? And let's say Faker continues to improve. I mean, Faker having played League for 15 years is going to be a monster. Like that's just, it's unreal. Like to imagine someone and the game hasn't been out long enough for that to happen yet. So I think there's so much potential, right? If League is around for 20 years, you're going to see such different players at that point than what you see now. I think a lot of players now are like, I started playing season 2, season 1. They're coming. The problem with League though is obviously the meta changes so much. The game itself changes so much. Yeah. It's hard to say that anyone who played in season 2 knows anything about what's going on now. So,
I mean, I will say this: after seeing what League of Legends has done to Ninja over the couple of months that he's been streaming, I don't know if I'm ready to see somebody who's on 15 years of League of Legends. That person, as you said, might be a monster, but in a different sense.
What's a bigger concern, the physical health or the mental health for those guys?
Honestly, I mean, having played a lot of League over the last 3 years myself, my mental state playing League is noticeably different. And I know it's a meme and it's like it's funny, like it's a joke online, right? Everyone talks about it, but literally, if you were to actually have anyone who's played League for more than a year sit down and have an honest conversation about it, it really does take a toll on your mental status when you are losing and your team is flaming you, and like it just feels terrible.
Just play Wild Rift. Wild Rift feels so much better. It's shorter games. The team can't flame you because there's virtually no way to type to keyboard warrior. It's I highly recommend it. Although perhaps some other different types of hand or wrist injuries whenever you're holding a phone like that or a tablet. Sure. Lord Audie, any shout outs you want to give before we go on to our second caller?
No. Shout outs to Gamefuel, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you so much for the call. Catch you next time. All right. Mark's going to go grab our last caller for Jordan here, and then afterwards we'll have Tim and Kelsey on to talk about Proving Grounds and MSI stuff. Corellis, thank you for the 21 months. John G365, Raging Pianist, has gifted a sub to Mark. Sally Czar for the 19 months, and Indigo Fog, thank you for the 14 months. Liberi is here. Liberi, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from State College, Pennsylvania.
State College, Pennsylvania. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I had a question for Jordan, sort of what your schedule is like. I think you're in a unique position working with at least 3 teams that I know about.
Yeah.
How does this interaction break down at each team? How involved are you in daily things that they do?
That's a really good question, actually. So this is an interesting thing because I think I'm one of very few people or therapists doing what I do. And that's why I created Respawn Therapy, is that this is kind of a new frontier, right? So I own my own business. I have an outpatient physical therapy practice in Santa Monica that I work at, and that was my day job. So last year I was working there 40 hours a week, and all the league stuff, all the esports stuff was additional time on my own after work. I'd get off at like 5, drive over to Cloud9 or drive over to EG, wherever I was going, work with players till about 7, go home and eat dinner around 7:30 or 8. And that was really, really taxing because I was basically putting in 50-hour weeks at a minimum. So once COVID hit, I shut the clinic down for about a month because we weren't sure what was going on in March. When we reopened and started bringing patients back in, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to double down on esports. This is what I love. This is kind of what I want to keep doing. I cut my own hours. I started working at the clinic, 15 to 20 hours a week, and doubled down on time spent either working directly with teams or putting out content or doing, stuff around esports, trying to, build a new avenue. So like streaming, I started doing that in January, and the whole purpose was to spread awareness for healthy gaming habits. So I'll stream occasional mediocre gameplay, but then, most of my stream is actually interviewing pro players, interviewing coaches, interviewing people about how to get better at gaming, and also trying to do consultations with streamers. So I'll bring streamers on and have like live PT consults with them to educate them and to educate their audience a little bit. But in terms of team time, I basically so every team gets a day. So I'll see, this year it changes depending on their schedule, but it usually revolves around LCS schedule. So Wednesday I'll see Cloud9, Tuesday I'll see 100 Thieves, Thursday I'll see EG. So every team knows that I'll be coming on a certain day. If any players, I usually see their LCS and their academy players. If any of them have issues, they know that's their day to check in. I give them stuff to work on. If there's anything that's an outlier, like, hey, someone just had an injury, I'll make it work. The nice thing is, because I do run my own business, I can create my schedule however I want. I try to leave a lot of open space to accommodate for that kind of stuff. So yeah, and I think that's really, and I also do privates as well. So I've had gamers reach out to me separately without organization, stuff like that, who just need help. And I'll do a lot of that stuff online, or I'll actually go and see them if they're in LA. But yeah, it's definitely a growing thing. Like I'm probably spending about half of my time doing esports stuff now and half my time seeing patients in my clinic.
That's cool. Does that answer your question, Liberi?
Yeah, I think it answers a lot, and then makes me super interested in how involved you are in. You talked a lot about practice schedules, and I know that people that work with teams, like mental health coaches, have a lot of influence on what practice schedules are like for certain players. So sort of how much influence do you have over sort of the weekly things that these teams do?
Yeah, so this is something I personally believe very strongly, is that I stay in my lane. I only give suggestions to coaches. I work very closely with the people on each of these teams that are in the space that they're in. So I work closely with the coaches. I work closely with the mental health specialists, the performance specialists, the trainers if they're there. And I try to focus my attention on what are the physical therapy impacts and effects that might affect this player. So the only time I've ever told a player not to practice is if it's causing them actual physical pain. Right. I don't tell players to practice differently because, this is what evidence shows is more effective for learning. Right. Although I believe that, I'm not going to tell a coach that. I'm not going to go out of my lane and say, this is the optimal way to practice. I suggest it, and I'll have conversations with coaches about it. But the only time I kind of, I guess, pull my authority card out and say, this is what you need to do, is when it actually affects the health of the player. So a lot of this is about, working as a team. I don't try to cover all the bases, right? I'm not going to tell anybody I'm a performance psychologist or anything like that, because I'm not. I'm aware of a lot of the research, and I'm aware of a lot of the techniques they use, but I'm always going to refer them back to who the actual professional is in that space.
I'll have kind of one follow-up question based off of the first question that they asked, which was the schedule. I don't know how in-depth you feel going into this, but do you just go in for like an hour and meet with all the players for like 10 minutes each? Or, I mean, what does that stuff look like?
Yeah, it depends. So usually at the beginning of the season, or the beginning of the split, I'll go in, I'll do a quick interview with every player just to check in on them, see how they're doing, get a baseline for where we're going to start the split at, identify any potential problems before. So I'm like, hey, this player already has a wrist issue. The split just started. I need to keep an eye on them. And then some people, especially with the turnover, right? When you have trades, I'm also meeting a lot of new players.
Yeah, exactly. So, you have a constant stream of new people.
Yeah.
Because the LCS is constantly churning players. Yeah.
Exactly. So the number one thing I try to focus on my first time meeting a player is getting to know who they are, getting to know their motivations, getting to know what makes them tick. Is this person someone who exercises regularly? Is this someone I'm going to have to convince to exercise? Is this person, do they already have really bad lifestyle habits? Are they good? There's all sorts of stuff that psychologically affects how I'm going to treat them. And then after that, my regular visits, I go in there and usually they'll have a list. So I work really closely with the management. So, Jonathan from C9, before I go in, I'll shoot him a text. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come by around 5:30. How many guys you got today? And he'll say, oh, you're going to see 4 people. And so I'll go in, I'll see those 4 people. Sessions are anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Depending on how detailed of a process it's going to be. And actually, the interesting thing is now, because so many teams have personal trainers now and they're actually working out, I'm seeing a lot of just regular orthopedic issues. Like, hey, I started running and I have shin splints. Like, that's not something you typically hear, but it's super common now because now they're all running. And these are people who haven't run before. So I'm seeing a lot of, knee pain, back pain, all the normal stuff that you'd expect from people starting to get physically fit. But yeah, it's variable. And that's kind of the nice thing is that, there's no one to tell me kind of like how to do this differently. So I'm just doing what works best for the players, the orgs, and for my schedule. But
I just like the idea that perhaps seeing all these pro players, it's like seeing a bunch of 70-year-olds. You have the same experience, like, oh, my
did I say that?
My knees are bad. You're like, man, your hip might need to get replaced soon. You've been sitting so long. Like,
the interesting thing is, though, culturally, you see that the longer that I've worked with a team or an org, the different, like the more it changes what I see. So, in other words, let's say Cloud9, right? I use them as the example because I've seen them the longest. Year 1. I was seeing a lot of really, really basic stuff. Like, oh, my wrist is tight all the time. My neck hurts. Like that kind of stuff, like what you'd expect from gamers. By year 2 or 3, some of the players that I've seen regularly, like, like Blobber, some of those guys, they've been on that team for a while. They don't have those issues anymore. They have different issues now that are much more in line with what they're doing differently now. So it's kind of cool because you also see the team culture start to change with, like that, like I always pull them out, but if you take Cloud9's LCS roster and you have them go in probably a powerlifting competition against any other LCS roster in NA, I think they would win. Like, they honestly have really good form when they lift, and it's a credit to their trainer Mike and the fact that they literally have to work out every morning. Like, Jack will make those guys get up at I think it's 9 a.m. and they have to do a 1-hour team workout every morning.
Yeah,
and it's just interesting culturally that's different than a lot of teams.
I like that Portillo's in chat right now because I want to pressure him into making content around this. Like, I want to see C9 put out a powerlifting video that puts up everyone's totals and challenges all the other teams to try and beat their personal best and stuff.
That Twitch powerlifting contest that Tyler One did was awesome.
Oh yeah,
that's such a good idea. Such a good idea.
Well, I think we're running a little low on time. So, Liberi, thanks so much. Is there anything you want to shout out before we say goodbye?
Shout out to Twitch TV /respawn_therapy. It's criminal that this guy only has about 300 followers. Everyone in chat, go give him a follow.
Yeah, I appreciate
you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And more callers like this, Travis. More, not callers.
Guests like this?
Guests like this, yeah. More callers like this, too.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
All right, thanks.
Cool. Well, I think that might be it. Obviously, I know you mentioned your Instagram. You said that you stream. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram is @Respawn Therapy, and then my Twitch is twitch.tv /Respawn_therapy. I'm trying to get the actual name. Someday that guy's gonna just go dead, and I can actually take the name. But
Now that you said it that way, if something happens mysteriously to him, I think we'll know who caused it. Yes.
Yeah, I check every couple of weeks. I'm like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate it. Like I said, I do a lot of interviews with industry professionals, pro players, anyone, streamers. So if you want to check it out, I do a lot of content like this, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Cool. Thanks for having me on, Travis and Mark. Really appreciate your guys' time, and it was fun being on the show with you.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing this, because I think it's been really cool, and I know Mark and I had talked about this a couple months ago, so I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah. And then I know I saw your tweet today. I'm really sad that LCS will not have audiences, but eventually we will all hopefully see each other in person at some events.
Yes, exactly. Cool. Thanks again, and yeah, I'll make sure that your Twitch gets linked. I saw somebody link it, but we have links turned off, so I'll do it myself. Thanks again, though, man. Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Okay. So, hello, everyone. Thanks again to Jordan for coming on. Hopefully, this is the type of call or the type of content that I do where I know that, like, when you say, oh, yeah, we're going to talk to a physical therapist, people are like, what? But then whenever we get people on, or we get them on, everybody in the chat is like, whoa, this is actually really interesting. And that's fun. And that's what it was, is I had a conversation with him a while ago, and we were talking about a lot of the stuff, and I'm like, this is the type of stuff where, like, people will see it and then they will end up enjoying it. Mark, while I'm setting up for our next call, I don't know if you had any thoughts on Jordan or any of the stuff you
I liked I like the topic. I was going to ask him, I don't know if he would answer this because it might not be professional, but I was going to ask, who has had, like, the worst habits of any player that he worked with, whether that's, like, sitting form or, like, how they held the mouse, like something like that.
If we had more time, that's what I was going to do. Is like, gamers are known for their, like, strange sitting postures. Like people that game, like the old picture of Hotshot GG where he's, like, gaming with his knees up in front of him and stuff like that. I was going to ask him what it's like going through, seeing all these people and their interesting sitting situations. What do you say?
Look at my cat's face when he had enough of it.
Yeah. Well. It's lovely. Okay. Let me see if we are good. I think we should be good. I'm going to save this, and then we'll go ahead and bring them both on.
What was the other thing that was funny was coming back to the whole practice tool thing, which was, like, the first interview I think you and I really did together. That
yes, yeah, we did that back in way back in the day, like 2015 or something like that. Yeah,
because we were at the bar when we did it. That bar we used to go to after every weekend.
Where we talked about it, but it's not that we did the interview there. You're saying?
Did we not do the interview there too?
No, we did the interview in. Where should I put? This is the first time I've had all these guests on. Need to figure out where to put the logo. No, we did it in the LCS studio, but I think maybe we talked about it there. Also, why is Double Lift showing up there? There shouldn't be Double Lift. Sorry, everybody who's seeing Double Lift and thinking it's him.
Can we? I mean, no offense to Tim, but did we just upgrade?
We did. That would be a downgrade. What are you talking about?
Oh, my bad.
Peter doesn't host an amazing show. Okay. Now it should say. I think it says Double Lift from when we did episode 100. Okay. So Kelsey and Tim need to join Discord so that we can get them on. Where are they? Hello? Kelsey? Tim? What else is going on, Mark? Fill for me really quickly.
I don't need to because Kelsey's here.
Oh, good. We're working on getting Tim. Oh, there's Tim. Okay, cool.
She's muted though. I think she doesn't want to.
Okay, cool.
He's in the waiting room.
Oh,
nice.
Everyone, the gang's all here.
Okay, both of you guys are here. I'm going to add both of you guys to the Skype call. So
I'm here, but can you hear?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Oh, cool.
Yay.
Yay, indeed. And you guys will finally be able to talk about Proving Grounds, which is what I've been incessantly bothered to talk about for forever. You guys should be getting calls right now. If you can just mute on Skype whenever you join so that we don't get you twice. There's Kelsey.
I'm secretly hoping Tim has the score hoodie on, so we'll be randomly, coordinated.
Oh,
did you
have? Did you guys both work together at the score? I guess that's true, huh?
No, we did not.
Wait, Kelsey, you didn't end up at the score. You were.
We did a little bit.
We overlapped briefly.
Very briefly. Okay. I was on the inaugural the score thing.
God, this is all these people starting all these esports media sites. You know, I
mean, you literally poached me from the score, Travis. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but like I literally can't remember anybody who was at the score. Like all these, like best of luck to everybody starting these esports media sites right now. But like, my God, is esports just littered with? There might be more dead esports media sites than there are esports organizations, quite frankly. Anywho, welcome to the second half of the show where we've got Kelsey Moser and Tim Seven Houston. Did I say it right? Houston. Okay, I did it right.
Nice.
Seven Houston.
Seven Houston.
Seven Houstons.
Kelsey, why don't
Seven
you?
Houston.
I'm going to let you guys both introduce yourselves just to see how you do it. Kelsey, what do you do?
I am Kelsey Moser. I am the competitive and collegiate development lead for Evil Geniuses. I can have a fun title like that, and no one really knows what it means, so it's great. I love it.
And formerly of 100 Thieves, formerly of Yahoo Esports, formerly of so many things.
Yes.
And as so many of us in esports have been formerly of so many places. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, so I run Oracle's Elixir.com stats and content site, and I also create Run It for the Travis Gafford Industries YouTube channel, and do some other content and things like that.
The most important thing you do, obviously, is run it every week. Very good. Well, both you guys are involved in the Proving Grounds world, and so I'm happy to have you both on to talk about it. What happened in Proving Grounds? What's the story?
Either one. I'm going to let Kelsey talk about it because Mark might be getting some popping from me, and I'm going to fiddle with it.
Okay.
Norg won, and that was fun.
That was fun. So let me ask you, Kelsey. So who was on Norg?
So Norg's roster is Viper, Anda. Wow, I worked with him, and I still say Anda sometimes. Viper, Anda, Five Fire, Value, and Big.
Okay. How many of those players were formerly LCS players?
3.
Okay. So this is my question. I'm curious if it feels good that an amateur team that had 3 former LCS pros won this. And this is, I think some people are going to take this as like an interrogation or like a verdict on me trying to say something. I ask it honestly because I think there were a lot of these moments of like, wow, this amateur team beat this academy team, and like people celebrating this stuff. It's hard for me whenever I'm like, okay, this is built around trying to find new talent. And what we found is if you stick 3 former LCS pros on without an organization and just toss them into the mix, they'll perkle up to, up to the top. So.
Yeah, so I think that this is a really interesting topic, and I see so many terrible takes about this in general, like just awful ones. So yeah, I think it's a great place to start. If you look at the opposite team as well, like Cloud9 Academy, that was also in the final, they had Darshan, Surenfire, Copy, Isles, King, right? And then all of these, like most of these players have not only been in LCS, but Worlds, like they're LCS players and they're Worlds players on this roster, technically. So this is a question where people are wondering, like what does this say about the development space? I think there are a lot of things that you can touch on here. The first one to me is that our solo queue baseline is trash. So a lot of what is required to kind of level up as a player is like almost kind of based on your ability to visualize certain elements better than others and to kind of get better quality practice. Also, I would say that the coaching space in amateur and academy is also still very much developing in terms of the overall level. So, of course, there is a very obvious experience advantage in terms of team play, matchup understanding, all of these different factors that comes from having had previous LCS experience doesn't necessarily say that there is no NA talent. And I would say one of the biggest problems with scouting in general is how results based it is. So that is one of my biggest kind of sandboxes on this, is just, does the team that wins Proving Grounds or Academy have good players on it? Yes. Are those the only good players in Proving Grounds and Academy? No. Do you have to have, the best player in every role to win Academy or Amateur? Can you be a talented player who isn't good on things like resets, tempo, timers, vocalization, understanding matchups? Can you be a good player without having these factors? Yeah, but you kind of need to learn those to start winning. You can have like an innate talent, and you can be very skilled and what I say is like have good hands, be able to think about fights quickly, or be able to, think on the fly about a bunch of different factors, a bunch of different variables, and process that well. Be very talented, be very willing to have like a certain amount of trigger pull, and then not understand a lot of these other factors. Whereas having previous LCS experience will give you a much better baseline and knowledge and understanding. Does that mean we have no talent in NA? No, it just means that there's a lot of those types of variables that we have to talk about before we can kind of assess and understand the scouting platform.
I think like to pick up on a certain piece of that, I think there tends to be a lot of focus on whoever wins the event, whoever wins Academy, whoever wins Proving Grounds now that it is that. And, whichever org wins that has the best talent pipeline, which is not the case. That's not true. There are some of the most interesting players in the Academy and Amateurs ecosystem are players that their teams didn't even qualify for Proving Grounds. There are some players who didn't even play in the event who are like, no, pay attention to those guys because we're going to be seeing more from them. And so, there might be a much more exciting talent development story to tell from a team that finished 7th or 5th, or, I'm trying not to remember, trying to remember the exact rankings and not specifically calling anybody out, but like, it's not just about the 2 teams in the finals and who's on those teams, even though there are some really good stories to tell there.
So by the way, I know we're getting some popping from Tim's microphone, so we're working on them on that.
He's just popping off, Travis.
Yeah, it's true. No, but I mean, I appreciate this from both of you guys, because I think it's good to hear. I mean, for me, like, I get frustrated because when I hear like, oh, this team is doing so, I frequently hear people talk about a team beating another team as if it's this huge, awesome deal, and I so frequently feel as though, that's actually we should spend less time looking at who won and who lost in these things, and try to actually figure out what players are exciting. So I'm glad you guys are kind of pointing that out. Okay, so that's what happened in Proving Grounds. I'm sure people will have some calls where we can talk about the stuff. We can try to figure it out. If people have takes on it or questions for either of them, having covered it. But also we have MSI coming up. I know both of these wonderful folks care passionately about how things are going to unfold at this year's first international event. So we can take some questions about that and anything else. But I think we have about an hour with a little bit of extra time. So Mark, have you started to pull? Looks like you've started to pull some callers. So
yep, I'm starting to get some. So I'll go grab one.
Yeah. You can disconnect and reconnect if you need to, Tim, to fix it. I can pull you back in.
I'll try. It might fix it for like 5 to 10 minutes, and maybe that's better than nothing.
Yeah. And I'll give you. I think you can rejoin this channel on your own, but if not, just join one of the other rooms, and we'll get you back in. Sure. Reading out some subs. Thank you to 1997 Quiblo, Red Rain, Final Fantasy 14 for the 1 year. Red Rain, it's good to see you. And Purple Ray Q for the 31 months. All right, our first caller is here. It's Rick. Rick, where are you calling from?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. What do you want to talk about on the show tonight?
Basically, my take is that no org kind of proves that the Reddit, Twitch complaining community about NA doesn't really know how to make NA great.
And how does it prove it? I'm curious.
Well, because I think that the consensus is that people are always saying that orgs need to like create better talent and all this stuff, but I don't think that the orgs are really responsible for creating talent. I think that the talent is just out there, and unfortunately NA doesn't have a lot of it, and that's why this team that was former LCS players won, because that's some of our best players that we have. And if an org made an academy team with like Big and Viper, I can just see that the comments now would be like, these washed up LCS players already got their shot. They don't need to be in academy anymore. But like they are some of our best players, and that's just the talent pool that NA has right now.
Oh, okay. So you're saying like, okay, them winning shows that are you suggesting it shows that we have a shallow talent pool because maybe other players are not winning?
Like the orgs are doing everything they can. They've found the best players. Our best players just aren't best in the world.
Our best. So you're saying like our best players outside of the LCS are players like Viper and Big.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Our best players outside the LCS are other former.
Oh, okay. So I kind of get this because, there's oftentimes, as you said, people on Reddit are like, we're tired of seeing all these former LCS players. There's really great talent that's sitting down there. And you're saying, well, okay, if that really great talent is so good, they should be able to overcome 3 LCS players that literally do not have an organization behind them or any kind of support.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
So I think one issue that I have with this, and hopefully my audio is a little better now.
Yeah.
One issue that I have with this is that the team with the 5 strongest individual players does not necessarily always win, right? You can win Academy or Proving Grounds or whatever it's going to be without having the best individual players, just like you can at any other level. And so again, like the team that wins is not necessarily the team that has the talent that is most interesting. And add on to the fact that the quality that a player or a team is competing at right now might not say nearly as much about how good they could be 18 months from now once they've had more time in the system, more time with the right coaches, time to develop the experience and be in these different situations and all those kinds of things. And that's going to help, like as excited or interested as I am in the story of Fire and where he might be able to go and hopefully he gets moved up and have a chance, him as an example from no org. There are players further down the chain, Kemby and Tenacity on 100 Thieves Academy, Jojo Piano and Evil Geniuses Academy. I could list a whole lot of other players that I'm interested in. And those aren't the ones who are either on a team that allows them to win or are, as stable that they need to learn how to be more consistent. So their low games don't knock them out of a tournament, stuff like that. All these kinds of other things that play into that. So I don't think, again, it doesn't come down to just winning a tournament shows that you are the best player with the highest potential in the future. I think there's a lot more to that kind of topic.
I have one kind of pushback on that, Tim, though, because I know we were just talking. I mean, I literally just said the individual player side, but like one of the things that I think is somewhat distressing about no org winning is literally in their name. I mean, I'd almost kind of push back on the caller point by saying if orgs are doing as much as they can, why are they being beaten by teams that have no backing, right? Like these guys did this all on their own. I know they had some coaches that were working with them or whatever, right? But like it's like you would hope that if EG is super dedicated to building out this amazing talent pipeline and has these 2 teams that are great and compete against each other, or if you got like Papa Smithy out there like figuring out how to build out this 100 Thieves thing, you would hope that over the course of the first 4 months of this year they would be able to develop a team that could beat these 5 guys that are like fuck the system. So
Travis, do you think the goal of an academy team should be to win Proving Grounds? Do you think that's the goal?
And that's what I was talking about earlier. So I kind of see it. I'm kind of coming at it from both directions. I get it, but I guess that
if we look at EU Masters, for example, right? And there's been a lot of debate and a lot of discussion on the EU side about whether or not academy teams should even be required. And part of the thing here that we should kind of look at and observe is that the goal of organizations that aren't academy teams or aren't connected to academy team in EU Masters, and this is easier to talk about, is to win EU Masters, right? Like that's the goal of no work is to win Proving Grounds. It isn't necessarily, and obviously part of that this gets a little gray area because you have the introduction of the development fee. So if I'm a Wildcard or some other organization like that, then maybe my goal isn't to win Proving Grounds, it's to get players noticed by LCS orgs. But to be extremely jaded about this, the history of like scouting in North America is very results based. So probably the best way to get a development fee is to raise a team that will win Proving Grounds. So in general, it all comes back to, it's like, what are the goals of these organizations? Are they very different? You might be specifically focused on teaching a player a type of skill or a type of X, Y, and Z. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that you win. Like, we had questions about this a lot. It's like, do we want to, push this champ pool issue, or do we want to push this like specific skill and focus that? Or do we want to like focus on what they have right now because it's under the wire in Proving Grounds, these types of conversations that end up bringing up. The other thing is, are LCS orgs doing all that they can? I would say no. Definitely not to develop players. I think that that's a ridiculous statement because there's a lot that still needs to be done. I mean, for one thing, the coaching attributed to the amateur and academy level is usually rookie coaches or coaches who aren't necessarily like super experienced, and maybe they do the best they can or anything. But a lot of times their goal is to get promoted to LCS, and being put on the academy team is oftentimes seen as being demoted, or you're bad at your job, or where I would say you need like head coaching skills. You need the ability to teach more specific aspects of the game to coach academy, right, than you do to be an LCS org. So it's just a different skill set for me, but it's still definitely perceived as, the worst coaches are sent to academy, the worst coaches are sent to amateur. So there's not like the best development resources are not being sent to these teams for sure.
So if the goal of a lot of the teams competing in Proving Grounds is not to win, why should we talk about who won?
Exactly.
He's almost there. He's got it.
Because this goes back to my conversation weeks ago that I had to pay basically a fine, which was my compensation to Tim and Barry to make a video highlighting some of the upcoming talent in Academy and Amateur, because I was like, we shouldn't care about viewership on these tournaments, and then all these people came out and said how distressing it was and how I was ruining Academy and Amateur and all that stuff. And here we are.
I still love watching Proving Grounds. I still love this player storylines. I still love highlighting what players are doing well, but I think a lot of coverage can be focused specifically on who are the individual players who are popping up.
Yeah.
Who looks really good. Like your video that you did with Tim is a great example, and I'm not just saying that because I love all of those players. But I think in general, it's like this is the kind of stuff that you're talking about. But I would like content like that to be a little bit more specific. It's like, what's a profile of this player that would make him good for a team? Is he good at this type of skill? Is he good at that type of skill? Because that would also help to me, like the roster building quality and things like that.
Yeah, I think that there's a bit of a distinction here that it's not that talking about the winners isn't important. It's talking only about the winners is not the right approach. You should talk about all the interesting players and all the exciting players.
And I don't want to take away from NoOrg, because it sounds like we're saying, NoOrg is all full of shit players and they just know more about the game and that's why they won. But because there are definitely like good players on that team, right?
Yeah.
Like I think Fire has demonstrated that he is definitely an academy level mid, and is consistently, he's probably one of the smartest players I've ever worked with. And you have Viper, who, like, I think he had some issues with like stage fright or stage performance before, and I think having played so many games, he's actually taking a lot more initiative. He's demonstrating a lot more confidence in his play. So that's kind of the and then of course, like, I think Big's timers have always been really consistent, things like that. And then Value has played like consistently well, but I wouldn't say that these are like the best players in every single role, but they're not bad by any means. either.
But big in value put out their best performances in the finals when the most people were watching. So good for them.
I think
Mark, you were gonna say?
Yeah, I was going to say a couple things, but I think the point about not winning being like the focus, not like you can't celebrate it or anything like that, is a big part. And as well, I mean, the caller's topic can like lead into a lot of different avenues of the conversation, whether we're talking about like, it's kind of embarrassing, that the teams with all this infrastructure won, but then you can get into like, well, how much infrastructure do you really get for some of these teams? I mean, like C9 is probably actually one of the better orgs, you could say, but like just because you're under TSM or, I mean, TL actually had a fair amount, but like you're not necessarily getting all the resources that the main roster of the LCS team is getting just because they have the same branding. Doesn't mean like you're really that closely associated with that team or anything like that. And so while it's still probably more than some of the amateur teams got, it's not like, to Kelsey's point, you're working with Rainover and Reaper and, all the coaches that you respect a lot. And so I think I like Proving Grounds that it was an opportunity to see these players go up against each other with different environments, different goals. Like you're saying, like Hanser's on TSM Academy. What's his goal? Be a backup in case Huni explodes, right? Like his existence in the academy system is almost completely separate from player development, even though he is playing with players that are trying to develop on his own team, So like, I think the whole ecosystem is very muddy, and you can't, like, if you try and paint it with just one brush, you're gonna get really fucking weird analysis where it's like, well, this one player's goal is different than this other player's on his own team.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to riff off of this stuff too, because caller, are you still here, friend?
Yeah,
Rick?
I'm here.
So one of the things you said, Rick, is like you were talking about if LCS teams do enough or whatever. Here, one thing I'm a little concerned about is that I have heard. So it was reported earlier this week by Bloop, who's somebody who covers a lot of the LEC stuff, that supposedly LEC teams won't be required to have an academy team in 2022. What I have heard is that there is concern that now LCS teams, because not all of them have wanted to have academy teams, will leverage this decision to say, hey, Riot, you can't force us to have them. If you're not going to force LEC teams to have them, you're not going to force LCS teams to have it. Now, obviously, this is speculative. I've not heard anything of this being like, officially said to Riot yet. But the fact that this is like a concern among people behind the scenes reflects what has been in the past. A feeling that some LCS teams are like, yeah, fine, here's our academy team. Like, I guess we have to do this contractually. And so I think that's a concern. Actually, Kelsey and Tim, I don't know if you've heard anything about that stuff or if you have any concerns about it.
This is really. I'll let Tim go.
Well, I was just going to say, like, if you're going to try to draw parallels between the two ecosystems, you got to be really careful there, because if you get rid of if you say you take every LEC academy team out of that ecosystem, you've still got Movie Star Riders and K Corp and all these other orgs that are existing because they actually have leagues to play in and exist as businesses. You take away Academy from NA and you've got, a couple of orgs that had competitive rulings against them, a couple of, like one from Europe that actually has a North American amateur team because they can, like, the actual existence of orgs as businesses is hardly here, and definitely not on anywhere comparable scale. So you can't just like take that layer out, because that layer is suddenly gone. And in Europe, you can take those teams out, and that layer of competition still thrives.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's a very concise way to talk about it too. But I think this is like a really good topic, just because when we're looking at the history of kind of EU Masters winners, there are actually a lot of teams that are not academy teams, right? So if you're applying the same kind of logic, that's partly because, again, we talk about the point, like, what's the goal of an EU Masters team that isn't attached to an org versus the goal of an EU Masters team that is attached to an org. And I think a lot of it was weird, because the difference is that ecosystem already existed before Riot came and said, okay, now you have to have an academy team, whereas I felt like part of the benefit of having academy teams was that the amateur ecosystem kind of gets a little bit, I would say, slighted by removing Challenger Series in NA, and there wasn't a great, a huge monstrous system built out. It wasn't sustainable on its own. It's still not sustainable on its own. And, part of the reason why 100 Thieves Next was so exciting is because it actually was something that got people to watch amateur, when they wouldn't have before. So that's a little bit of a different thing there. I think one point that's very good is that it is necessary to have like these amateur orgs that aren't affiliated with LCS orgs to kind of try to develop and go for talent. But I also think because there will be a lot of talent that's kind of, I want to say, almost a little bit rare, or in some regards from certain people's analysis, like there will be the guy that's coming up and then everyone is talking about him, and then a lot of people will fight for him. So being able to kind of look for those players earlier is useful, also because of what I've talked about before with the solo queue baseline being so bad. In NA, I think getting LCS orgs and infrastructure to spend more time with these players earlier on and get them kind of like a longer period to develop is also beneficial before they're kind of in academy and then thrown out after 2 years and decided that they're done developing, even though they had a coach who said, go watch VODs, figure out what you can do from there. So I think it's a very, very interesting question, because I would say that a lot of times EU Academy teams actually end up just kind of, especially because of how obsessed a lot of LEC teams are with rookie talent, because rookie talent is cheap. So a lot of LEC Academy teams almost are perceived as threats, to the LEC teams, whereas in NA that's definitely not the case, I would say, for the most part.
Well, I know we went kind of broad-reaching here, Rick, on your answer, but what do you think, really quickly, before we? Yeah,
there's a lot of good input. I think the main question I would have for Kelsey, who definitely knows the most about this topic, would be when you talk about NA solo queue being so bad, and you talk about that teams can do a lot more to put resources into players and get better coaching and stuff. My question would be, would it be better to put those resources into NA players, or would it be better to like the best NA jungler versus the 10th best Korean Lee Sin one trick? I like who is better to put the resources in, or
so I know. So
or signing like a EU Masters.
So your question is definitely taking us into a different direction, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I don't know if you have a short answer to that, Kelsey, that you can say.
I think that if we don't develop players in our own ecosystem, our ecosystem keeps getting worse, and we bring the 10th place Korean Lee Sin one trick over, and he plays NA solo queue and gets worse. Kind of where I am.
And I also think that history has shown that the way to build a winning LCS roster is not to get the best imports. The way to build a winning LCS roster is to get the strongest domestic core and add the right imports on top. So invest in the domestic talent.
Really good way of putting it. Rick, thank you so much. Any shout outs you want to say before we take a quick break?
No, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Rick. Have a good one.
You too.
I realized that we slipped past my normal break time for the first ad slot. So we're gonna do two, not back to back, but we'll hit the game fill one after the next caller, the next two. But I do want to give a shout out to Alienware. So first off, they got some cool stuff coming. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but I've been teased on some stuff, and I think it's going to be really cool. So stay tuned for that over the next. Actually, I don't know if I can say a time frame. Over the next time, stay tuned for some cool stuff that they're coming out with. Secondly, one thing I haven't really done a good job of promoting before is, again, if you go to alienware.com/Travis, please, whatever you're doing, drop whatever you're doing, Alt-Tab out of your game, whatever if you've got this on a second screen, like, drop whatever you're doing. Go to alienware.com/Travis and scroll down to the bottom of that page where it says Alienware Arena, get rewarded for doing what you love. This is a completely free thing you can sign up for, and there's a ton of cool stuff that you can get from it. They constantly are updating it. Last year, they gave away 1 million game keys on this thing. In the past, they've had League of Legends stuff you can get. There's like discounts for things there. There's all sorts of stuff. We're probably going to do something with them soon on this. But signing up, going to alienware.com/Travis and signing up for Alienware Arena and just seeing what you can get. It's the type of thing where you can sign up for it, check out what's there right now, and then I know sometimes you don't want to get the emails, but let them email you, because they will give you updates on what game keys they're giving away and what stuff they're giving away. And it's a really cool resource. They just do this as like a marketing effort, as a way to stay connected with people. So I think it's really cool. I need to do a better job of promoting it, and this is me doing that, hopefully. So alienware.com/Travis. I'll put the link in the chat right now. There's also going to be in the description of the YouTube channel. And then, of course, stay tuned for more exciting stuff to come from them. All right. And grab the next caller. I was going to read a sub, but nobody has subbed in a bit. So while Mark is doing that... Oh, Darking, thank you for the 39 months. Thank God I was able to read something. Tim, what is Run It going to be about this week?
Run It is going to be an initial overview MSI preview. Just going to look at some of the let's put a bunch of teams and players out there who does the most of this and the least of that, and just get a stylistic comparison mostly.
Bit of a primer for people to get excited for, and then I'm sure
high level overview, and then we'll start honing in on more specific stuff a week from now once I've had more time to watch VODs.
Cool. Well, TomShoe is here. Tom, you always call, and then here's what happens: you're aggressive, you're hostile, and then I match that energy, and then what happens is then the people who don't watch every episode and don't realize that that's your shtick, they yell at me for being a dick. So I want to thank you for getting me screamed at in my comments. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, it's no problem at all. But I think at this point, people kind of know what my you know what I be at. But whatever.
Where are you calling from?
Strange city name.
Yeah, calling from Washington D.C.
Washington D.C. And what do you want to talk about?
So I wanted to talk about the recent situation following the competitive ruling to SolaFide Esports and what happened to their old roster. They ended up not getting paid at all. For those who really don't have any context on the situation, so I believe early on in the Proving Ground season, the roster of I think what was not Academy team, I think that it was correct me if I'm wrong here, it was Dokla, Winston, Tuesday, Apollo, and Zazel were approached by SolaFide Esports and their owner, known as Audie. I believe he was I think he was like a finance bro or something like that. And and he was apparently asked to, apparently offered them, from what I heard, salaries that were above Academy level. And of course,
I heard the rumor was one of the players was getting paid 6 figures.
Yeah, it was big money. Yeah, apparently, I guess he had some kind of plan to make this profitable or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, LCS teams aren't profitable, so his plan was already rough. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so whatever. He had some kind of plan. Of course, it sounds good, so players obviously go for it. The season goes on, and over time, it becomes apparent that he hasn't paid out a single cent. And now he, once they start demanding answers, and he goes ahead and pieces out, and now this competitive ruling goes down. He's banned indefinitely. Comes out with a statement saying, "Oh, I've had trouble trying to transfer money internationally." Like, bro, are you trying to dodge taxes and transfer that thing from Ireland? And now it's just a huge mess. And now all the players are out of money. I don't know if we're going to be doing any contract disputes or anything like that, but it's just a giant disaster for pretty much everyone involved. And honestly, you'd really get very frustrated over something that happens like this, but it's really nothing new. Like, if you've looked at the Challenger series back before Academy was Academy, like way back in 2015, this shit was happening all the time. Like, shout outs to Sam Matter Gaming for the real OGs, but yeah, it just makes you wonder.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, do we need to start considering like having stricter regulations for any academy team that wants to participate. I mean, any amateur team that wants to participate under the guise of an org, because I know like Riot has been taking some steps in certain pieces, like adding the new contract database to like protect against poaching and things like that. But I really think that at least not paying your players has been like the gold standard for what feels like a little while now. And can I
go ahead and wrap it up?
Okay, yeah. So I was thinking that if we're gonna have issues with potentially paying players, like honestly, running an amateur team really is not that expensive when you think about it. It's what I think someone ran the numbers a little while ago.
Sorry, really quickly, what's your point?
I just the regulation, that was
the regulation. Okay, so should there be more regulation or requirements on amateur teams if they want to be able to compete in these tournaments? Is your take, right?
Can I finish?
That's what I'm. Is that it?
Brevity is the soul of wit, my friend.
Yes.
I mean, yes, that was the take, but I didn't finish the whole point.
Should Super Sunshine Fruit Basket Warriors be allowed to compete in amateur? This is the question.
So I think we got your point. There's a couple things here. One, just to confirm, because Tim lives in Canada, so he's international. I'm able to pay him on a monthly basis. So I just wanted to be put out that you can't actually pay people internationally. And then I guess so. The broader question of to Kelsey and Tim, maybe even to Mark, what can Riot do? What should be done to help better protect these players, while also making sure that we have amateur organizations that can compete?
There's a lot of weird gray area here. For example, I know that certain players are on the contract database for amounts of money that probably wouldn't hold up in a court if it came contested, but there's just not money in amateurs. So what do you do? Do you tell orgs that they can't come in and pay an amount of money that they probably won't make a return on anyway to try to compete for, development fees? Do you tell players that are coming in as a group of friends that they can't play because they don't have, strict regulations on how their organization should operate, right? There's a lot of variables and questions that come in that you have to kind of work with. The other thing is that Riot have, still kept sort of an arm's length away from some of the BPOs in the Proving Ground space. For example, Riot are not going to necessarily tell Risen like who they can and can't allow to compete within their tournament in the tier 2 setting, right? So there's a lot of weird stuff that happens. It's like in an ideal world, would it be great if shit like this didn't happen and there were things that prevent that? And it's like, yeah, there's a legal system that should punish these people, and that legal system exists. I don't know if we should go and say, Riot, you are the ones who need to be responsible for this kind of thing, because I feel like making Riot control more and more of the space doesn't necessarily always make everything great, So that's
what?
Kind of
You're suggesting Riot shouldn't be able to completely control everything?
I was gonna go the other direction. I was gonna say Riot should make their own prison. And when you sign up to make a part of their ecosystem, whether it's LCS, Academy, Amateur, you have to sign up with this. And if you break any of their rules, you go to literal Riot prison.
Well, okay, here, I mean, there's probably something in between here, right? Where, like, perhaps, let me ask you this. For you guys, whenever an amateur team competes in one of these events, do they have to, like, register their organization with Riot beforehand? Do we know of?
I don't think so.
No, they don't have to. If you want your players on contract database, you have to register. But if you don't, then you don't.
Yeah, because I think being in the contract database allows you to take advantage of the development fees, kind of stuff that's been mentioned, like getting compensated if an academy team signs one of your players, stuff like that. So there are benefits.
You can still get those, But
more guaranteed, I think, right?
But your players aren't
better
protected
protected,
from poaching.
So I think step one
Right.
could be, and I'm not, obviously I'm trying to solve this in a second, but you guys tell me if any of this sounds weird. Just if you want to compete in any of these things, hard blanket, you have to register your organization there, and then at that point in time, Riot's a little bit more involved. They have a little bit more that they can get, and having a system by which the players are able to immediately go to Riot and say, hey, I was supposed to be paid today and I have not been paid. And that can immediately activate some sort of situation where Riot can start to get involved immediately and being like, and maybe it's like, okay, you didn't get paid for an extra day, some sort of bank error or something like that. But if once you start to trigger too many of these red flags, your organization is out, the players get the spot in any tournament that they're in, and you can go fuck yourself. I feel like that's sort of a good system.
There's a certain amount of systems work that could be done to improve on these things, and I think some of those ideas could definitely work, or maybe put the whole thing in. I don't know, put in the Travis Gafford system. But I think on the other side of it, and I have zero intention of blaming this on the players. I want to make that very clear up front. But there is a certain opportunity for players to recognize situations that might be a little, raise some yellow flags, maybe not even raise red flags, but go, hey, this one seems a little too good to be true, right?
Tim, anytime you have any system that puts any faith in players having any kind of like...
Well, but see, this is part of my point, right?
20
exactly.
Right?
This is part of my point. Like you would have in general, you'd have a certain expectation on somebody to protect themselves from this situation. Not that they always can, but to a certain reasonable extent. But these are young guys who have not they're not the most, worldly experienced people who have been out here doing business and know the ways that they can get screwed over. So maybe, and there are also not that many great like agents or representatives like that, or people who can give legal advice that they might not even know who to go to say, hey, I'm getting offered this. Do you think it makes sense, or is there anything I actually should be concerned about?
Right.
There aren't there are some people that could help with that in the space, but that's part of what makes it so awkward, is that it's kind of a vulnerable population in a certain sense, right?
Well,
You know what would be a great overarching organization to actually help guide players through these tumultuous
The Players
legal
Association
situations?
isn't going to help amateur players who have just... I mean, I saw some people on Reddit also saying, "Oh, the Players Association should step in here." Obviously, I think Players Association should do more at the LCS and Academy level, but I just don't think with kind of the awkward pseudo pro player situation that these amateur guys are in. I don't, even in a world where the Players Association was highly functional, it's hard to imagine them being able to help. These guys are not going to be paying fees into it or anything like that.
Well, the other thing I was going to say too that Kelsey kind of mentioned was the amounts of money that you're probably negotiating over in this ecosystem is so minuscule that you're probably not actually going to take anything to actual court. The league, unless it's small claims court, maybe, I don't know. But for the most part, the amount of fees that you'd be paying lawyers and the amount of time and mental headspace that you go through in an actual legal battle is fucking nuts. And realistically, no one's actually going to do that. So even if you did get a lawyer or had a lawyer or Riot overseeing, or people signed up for this different stuff with contracts, people are still just going to break the rules if they're scumbags. And realistically, the way that you would punish them is pretty shit. It's just not going to happen.
It would be like suing Twitch for 3 years and then only getting 21 grand at the end of it.
This is actually kind of weird, because since we were talking about why are we talking about small claims court when SolaFide was, all the players were talked about, all their rumored salaries were almost north of 100 grand. Would that not be worth suing over?
Honestly, probably not, depending on how expensive the legal defense is, because realistically, you're going to be in a battle for 2 to 5 years unless they just totally fold and you negotiate out of court, because that's honestly what mostly happens. People just kind of, if pardon my French, but kind of just pull their dicks out and start measuring them and sending documents back and forth prepared by lawyers until someone folds, or you start getting in front of a judge and it's just a total mess. As someone, I've been in one of these situations before. It's just a total mess. It's not worth it generally, even for upwards of 100, six
And you know
figures.
what, Mark? We resolved that. Okay, the two of us resolved that. You're not in that situation anymore. We're fine.
The question: Does Audie even have money that you can go to court with him over? I don't know. maybe you can get a lawyer to physically fly to wherever his alleged offshore account is, and
Ireland.
Yeah, and then he doesn't respond to your emails for 6 months. Like this is the kind of stuff you get into with a real legal battle.
Somebody on Twitter said he dissolved the LLC, right? So if it's like the LLC went bankrupt and never had any money, then there's no money for the LLC to pay out. And we're not lawyers here, but
rabbit hole that you're never going to really see any returns out of. And so, like, if someone wants to, by all means, make a legit seeming thing, which is easier to do than to actually do it. And then when their hand gets caught in the cookie jar, they just say fuck it and they're out. Like it's hard to really punish someone like that.
How would you feel about an escrow system?
Sorry, you're suggesting the money gets paid to Riot or something?
Essentially, you'd have a portion of a player's salary paid out third party to a Riot, or paid out to third party, whether it's Riot or someone else. And say if they break that contract, then whatever is left in escrow is immediately paid to the players.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's just really tough because I assume some of these organizations are running on a very narrow margin, and perhaps they don't have 20 grand sitting in a bank account at the beginning to like put up. I don't know.
And to get the players to pay into that, you'd have to have them be in a union that forces them to do it, because otherwise, good luck.
Well, I think he's just talking about just having the play, like, hey, you want to compete in this.
Have the teams force it?
Have the teams pay in as almost like a security deposit, right? Like, if you fuck up, we pay this out to your players, and then you can go do something else. So
you can get banned for life.
just X amount of dollars, or a certain percentage based on whatever your salary contract, whatever.
Kelby in chat says he'll handle it.
Again, like I feel like a lot of these restrictions would actually be prohibitive to certain orgs that do want to pay their players, right? Because there are definitely orgs that don't pay at all, and there are orgs that only pay like $200 a month, and they probably are paying what they can off of their full-time job salary doing something else. So those types of situations, it's like if you want to pay your players something, right? You're in a position where like now, okay, you've got the escrow system, and right, you can't actually afford to do that, so you're just not going to pay them at all. The other aspect of that is you start to get into the question of maybe that's better because then they're not on contract database for like $200, $100 a month,
like
but you never know.
And I agree. I do feel like stuff like that can be worked around, at least on a case-by-case basis. Well, I wouldn't say case-by-case, but up to a certain dollar amount. And stuff like that can be, negotiated with, or we can all get into a room and talk about, okay, what is the average dollar amount that we're all paying our players, and at what point do we need to start putting these systems in place?
Probably approaching zero. Like the thing is that the reason why you could see SolaFide coming from a mile away was because of how much of an outlier they are. Like it's so absurd. Like Barrage, one of the best amateur teams, pays zero, right? There's such a gigantic outlier, and there was so many red flags. And do I blame the players? No, because if someone's gonna say 180,000 or 100,000 or whatever the fuck they're offering, right? 70,000, who knows, right?
You only really need 1 month of that to be paid to be worth it.
More than an academy salary, right?
SolaFide seems like. Oh, go ahead, sorry, Kelsey.
More than an academy salary, right? If you're gonna be offered that, you have a contract. Your agent signs off on it, X, Y, and Z. You're probably gonna go for it.
Totally agree.
SolaFide seemed like the type of org that believed that an NA team would lift the Summoners Cup within the next 2 years.
They sound like.
Do you get that reference? Anybody get that reference? It's a team member reference, just in case.
Yes.
All right.
I was gonna go with they believe that better people make better players.
True.
That's my reference.
Okay, so look, interesting conversation, but also we don't need to solve a thing right now. I'll give TomShoe a lot of credit here in saying that I completely agree that this was incredibly obvious that something like this would happen, and I do hope that I wish Riot had better plan for a situation like this, but I hope that they do more going forward to solve for this, because as anybody who's been in esports for a long time can tell you that, like, if you're it's hard to get. They have a hard enough time getting their LCS teams to pay players. How many teams have they kicked out of the LCS for not paying players? It's actually a significant amount.
Any Winter Fox stands?
Yeah, well, or Tip, or I don't know, ton of them. Anyway, Tom, thank you for calling in. Anything you want to shout out?
So the League of Legends subreddit, we're actually having a prediction tournament for MSI. So it's a pretty cool way to basically show off your knowledge and get destroyed by me in terms of being able to show which teams are going to do well and not at the MSI this year. Have plenty of fun predictions. Who's going to win? Damwon Kia, Cloud9. Is it going to be Mad Lions or PSG? And we might even expand this to different realms.
Too bad TSM and G2 aren't there.
We make LCS, and I'll save the time. The answer will be yes, but definitely give it a shot when you get a chance. So check it out.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep. Peace.
It's going to be hard to beat Kelsey and me on those predictions because we were both really, really good this week, I know.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to do another break. Mark, you're going to pull one more, right? I hope.
Was I?
I hope so.
Because there's no one else in the waiting room, and it's 9 o'clock.
I know, but we have to go a little over because we started a little late, and then we had our. I mean, we haven't gotten any MSI takes or anything like that, so we've only had 4 callers.
You want the MSI take of C9's going to win MSI? That'll be a fun one, huh?
Is there any good MSI? Here, you figure it out. While I talk about Game Fuel. Shout out to Game Fuel, everybody. Thank you so much. So many of you guys have been tweeting at me. I know I say this all the time, but please continue to do that. It's always really nice. You can go to Game. Actually, I'm going to put it in the chat. And if you're in the YouTube right now, if you're in the YouTubes and you're watching the VOD, click on the description below. You can go check it out. There's a specific link that if you click helps me. But also, if you use code Travis at checkout, you save 5% off, which is fantastic. And there is still that Amazon link for those that, for some, a few of you where you can't get Game Fuel in your area, you can get it off of Amazon with that link, and that also helps me. But I want to thank them so much for what they do in supporting the show. Still working on doing a cool thing with them in the near future. I can't talk about it yet, but hopefully a cool little stream that we'll have coming out soon. And do me a favor, when you tweet at me to tell me that you got it, and you get one of these like cases that has the multiple flavors, tell me which one you like the most, because I'm going to tell you that the honest answer is cherry burst. And if you give me a different flavor, then you've failed the test. So that's my take on the Game Fuel situation. Anyway, thank you so much, Game Fuel, for sponsoring Hotline Link. Thank you all of you for grabbing it. And by the way, still have that fridge in the back. It's a little out of focus right now, but thank you to Game Fuel for sending me this fridge and making people jealous. Mark is grabbing our next caller right now, which I appreciate. Ripapa Franku, thank you for the 6 months. And Sparkling Llama gave out 5 community subs. A lot of people gifting subs for the first time recently on the stream, and I think it's because tax season has had a bunch of people get their tax refunds. That's my theory. I need to be more excited about this time every year. StarChar is here. StarChar, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Wayne, Pennsylvania.
Wayne, Pennsylvania. I think our second Pennsylvania caller of the night. Maybe there's another P. I don't know. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I think that RNG is going to win MSI, and I think that Xiaohu is going to gap every other top laner that is in MSI.
I think I saw Kelsey's face twitch when you said this, so I'm very curious to see. Well, actually, Mark has been kind of quiet on tonight's show. Let me ask Mark. Mark, what do you think?
I haven't
don't know
done
how much
any
of these
prep for
games you've been able to
MSI.
see. Well, I want you to say.
But I think Damwon's going to win. I did watch their final. I like Damwon.
Very good. Thank you. As always, excellent analysis. Tim, we're gonna end with Kelsey because I know Kelsey's gonna have a lot to say on this topic. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I'm just starting to get into my deep VOD review on it. I've in the stuff that I have watched of Xiaohu so far, I've been pretty interested in what I was going to see because obviously there's such a unique story there. But I think he's done some things that like caught my eye. Like, oh, that's interesting. That's a little different. Like, kind of what I was hoping for. Like that he'd play top lane slightly different way, and I have felt like I've seen that in a good way. I think there are some things about the way they play also that make me feel kind of high variance, which is maybe a bit of a standard LPL take to have if you come in and you're not like, knee deep in the LPL all the time. But I do think that they do kind of embody that they could just snowball games a lot, and if all their plays work out, it's just going to be dominant. But I think they could also, get exploited. So the biggest non-take there, I think I'm probably going to end up leaning down one, but I need to finish my prep.
Is there any? Will Xiaohu be featured in the Run It this week?
Probably.
Okay.
But I haven't built all the charts yet, so.
Well, we'll hopefully have some more Xiaohu conversation for you, StarChar there. All right, Kelsey. Why is RNG winning MSI and upsetting my favorite Sam1?
So I actually haven't decided, but I do actually think that RNG have major problembles. Huge, gigantic, catastrophic, terrifying problems. And I think one of the big things...
You're like, I haven't really decided yet, which makes it sound like this is... But then you're like, but there's a cataclysmic issue.
Well, the team is on fire.
A lot of teams have problems within their playstyle, and then they still win, games. It happens all the time. So, but I think I will say that I don't actually favor RNG to win MSI right now. I think the reason why they can is because I don't think that Xiaohu is the best top laner by metrics of like champion pool, specific like wave management or anything like that. What he's really good at is he's really good at setting up dive opportunities. He's really good at recognizing trading windows, and he's really good at playing like these types of punishing carries, and he's insane at side laning. And this is like the thing that if you dig up any kind of VOD from me talking about RNG in 2018 or 2017, I talked about how RNG are actually secretly one of the best side laning teams in the world, and they just never do it because they always play like double tank solo lanes, and UZI plays AD, but the best RNG was 2017, in my opinion, because you had UZI actually playing like the Varus. You had the side laning solo laners, and so Xiaohu is like demonstrating that he's a very key part of that, and why that kind of pressure allows them to juggle pressure across the map so very well. I think that's one of the things that Damwon actually struggled to play against historically. And by historically, I mean like from Worlds to kind of more recently. So I would say that is one thing that gives them a benefit, like kind of a benefit. The thing that I think will really destroy RNG though is their mid-jungle synergy is not there. And by that, I mean Crya's champion pool is going to be terrible for this MSI. I think we're going to see a lot more skirmishing mid-jungle duos. We're going to see like a lot more stuff like that. And I think that Damwon is a team that's going to be way better at that type of play. So that is where, and then Crya also sucks at side laning, and Gala has a limited champion pool. There's a bunch of stuff, but Xiaohu's good at side laning. Just don't let him play tanks ever.
Do you think that I mean, obviously a lot of people are focusing on RNG and Damwon, but the reigning champion of MSI, people I feel like are not discussing him a lot as a potential winner again of MSI.
Who's the potential winner of MSI?
The reigning champion, returning to defend his title. So, I mean, doesn't that make sense that we would?
That's a point,
The only returning champion.
He's talked about swapping to top lane. Maybe we get to see a Xiao who perks off again.
Well, he's talked about that, but he just tweeted a second ago or 10 minutes ago, I'm going to make mid great again at MSI. Watch me. So I don't... He might do it
versus Cryan. I don't think Cryan's bad. Like to specify, I don't think Cryan's bad, but I think that, when you're in a position where you have to blind Corki, you're probably not doing great. Yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Do you think that the previous Mad Lions coach will have caused them so many issues as a team that they will really underperform at MSI?
Yeah, I mean, Peter's trash, so there you go.
Okay.
Left all these issues behind.
Filled them full of bad ideas.
All right.
Here are all the things you should do that win LAC and fail at MSI.
StarChar, what do you think of all this?
I think that Kelsey has some extremely good points there. Yeah, I do think Yahoo will gap everybody, but RNG does have a lot of weaknesses that Damwon could also exploit. Just because like Damwon is by far probably the best team fighting team in MSI, but I still have faith in LPL. I think that they can pull it off.
Well, we'll
cause
see.
upset.
We'll see.
I
It
think
should be
Damwon
exciting. I'm
confident.
excited about it. I will say,
To clarify, just in case people take me seriously, Peter Dunn is not a trash coach. There you go.
what? Why are you going to clarify? We're trying to spark controversy. I need clips from this show to put on my TikTok that will go viral. And if you just undermine it, then it's not great. By the way, shout out to Riot. Actually, shout out to the fucking Reddit thread today where the EU people were like, "Oh man, I hate that it's not a good time zone for Riot or for EU fans or something. It's something like 2 p.m. there or something. I forget." But it's like 6 a.m. here, and I don't. Mark and I are going to be up so early, and then we have to prep for our hot tub stream after our post match hot tub streams.
Can we actually get a hot tub?
I was just talking about that, and we need to find somebody who has a backyard where we could. I actually think it would be hilarious to do a hot tub recap every day after.
I'll message
MSI.
Josh Kim and see if he's still living at that hotshot house. I know they had a pool back there. They might have had a hot tub.
Do you
Wait,
guys
hot
need
shot?
like a social distance hot tub? Like, do you need 2 hot tubs?
Well,
Is that-
we'll be vaccinated by then, so I think
My
Yeah,
second.
but have you not seen the Gamer Doc tweets about how you shouldn't just take the vaccine for granted and you need to still be careful?
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
My point is, I want to do hot tub post MSI streams with Mark, and if we can figure out a way to do this, then I think that would
And it'd be much
quite
better
fun.
than Travis and I filling up 2 separate inflatable tubs in our apartments if we can get a real hot tub.
Yes.
And
Anyway,
that sounds
An
pretty
inflatable?
entertaining. That sounds pretty funny to me, actually. And
Do you
I
not-
just
I
have
guess-
a terrible sense of humor.
You might only have a shower, not a bathtub. But
I have a bathtub, but you need to be able to like splash around a little bit, you know?
I don't have a bathtub. I do like the idea of Kobe coming back from casting, or I don't know what their setup is going to be. Maybe he's in his room and walking out, and there's just me in the living room sitting in a kiddie pool. StarChar, thank you for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we say goodbye?
Yeah, shouts to Kelsey's stream. She has a lot of live viewing for LPL, and if you want a good perspective on LPL, it's a good stream to watch. Shouts to Oracle's Elixir and Tim. I love the resources that he has for League of Legends statistics there. Shouts Alienware and Game Fuel, of course, because without them, the show wouldn't be as great as it is.
Thank you so much for the call. Really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that's the show. First off, shout out to Riot. It's been about 7 weeks since they have refused to say anything about the import rule conversation, and this is me keeping them honest, because I forgot to say at the start of the show like I do. We're coming up on 2 months, though, so excited for that. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and say goodbye to everybody. Mark, what do you got? What kind of shout-outs do you have?
None. None at all.
Tim.
I have a shout out to all of Mark's shout outs, and also Oracle's Elixir. And check out the Run It series. MSI stuff starts this week.
Yeah, it should be good. Kelsey.
Shout out to Evil Geniuses for paying my salary. It's very appreciated. And then also shout out to Proving Grounds, and also shout out to EG having 2 teams in the top 6 because results-based analysis.
It's not about performance there.
So I don't
In
care.
fact,
We
I
didn't
think-
win the whole thing, so it's fine. You know.
I think it's a failure to be in the top 6. You guys are not experimenting and
Same.
pushing yourself enough.
Exactly. We're not developing players hard.
Who got dead last?
Who got dead last? I mean, it
the
depends
teams that
on
didn't
whether or
even
not.
There seems to
Depends
take
on whether or
qualify.
not you're counting like the D3 teams who are in Risen and stuff like that.
Whoever those teams are at the bottom, those are the ones that are doing.
Shout out Spawn for TLA being at the bottom
Oh, yeah.
after
Actually-
a promising end to the
Yeah,
regular
but you know
season.
that's all because Armeo had to play in the finals. So
Actually, TLA won It's true. Like they placed last and they actually won in the end. True. Holy shit.
Shout out
also
people
to
who pay people.
And also to Five Fire's dad. Great guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been
There's
Hotline
some
League.
quality parents out there. Five Fire's dad, AK's mom, all good stuff.
Anyway, this has been Hotline League episode 170. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks to all of our guests this weekend, or this episode. I need to get back into this stuff. Go follow me on TikTok. I'm at Travis Gafford. That's where I will be. We're canceling this Twitch channel and the YouTube channel. You will only be able to watch this show exclusively on TikTok. So go subscribe there so you don't miss any more episodes. This has been Hotline League episode 170.